Hey guys, it's Mallow here once again, here to deliver the bad, extremely expected news about the Flicker Strike single target in Endgame. That is Flicker Strike cast on crit discharge, of course. A really nice Flicker Strike, I think, will still work pretty good, and possibly even a really nice Flicker Strike cast on crit should be cool. But, yeah, not really combined with discharge, is all I'm going to say. In any case, just a bit more gameplay and talk about the character, because in the end the character actually was, fairly successful for cast on crit flicker discharge. Like, it mapped really nicely and felt pretty fluid for good fast XP, and it was fairly fun depending on the maps and the situations and all that. For example, these harbingers, or harbingers in general, are content that were pretty smooth for it, and there was a few really specific things that it was kind of good at. So something like harbingers, it was pretty good because it would just get right inside procs bubbles and kill things as they spawned. Things like breach stones, that sort of thing, really kept up super nice on them and just killed things as it spawned. Ultimately, I do think it's a bit of a waste of currency and effort to do something like a flicker discharge when you could be doing something else far more effective. But as a proof of concept, pretty cool stuff, and felt kind of cool playing it. But yeah, I probably wouldn't really recommend anyone else waste their money on something like this. And then the endgame single target was definitely pretty clumsy. Like, you could run out of charges sometimes, which didn't happen too often, but either way, the just sheer nature of how susceptible to damage you are when you're flickering and don't have much control of what your character's really doing, and you're just pure melee at that point. If you don't kill something immediately, and we never did, you would end up taking quite a bit of damage. So it's got something like, I don't know, 2 to 4 million DPS. It really depends on the sort of high rolls, the situation, the charges, all of that. And I was using a trigger dagger in the end. So CoC Breeze is great, but the trigger daggers do put out a bit more DPS once you're ramped and going off at a boss. So that is just a 8-second trigger on a weapon with 40% more spell damage, and then some other rolls if you can get them. But that's the idea, because with the threshold jewel, as I mentioned before, with the threshold jewel that takes discharge down to 0.25 seconds, it does give you the bypass on that 8-second cooldown to 0.25. So that's still an interesting interaction that you can follow through on if you really want with other builds and stuff. But it was ultimately lackluster to be going for Flicker Strike Discharge with this cast on crit setup. And I will also mention that Cyclone with the trigger weapon just didn't work very well, because if you're like doing one Cyclone, I think that only counted as one action, one skill being used. So you got to like restart Cyclones or restart your little casts, and then it'll go off. So if I was cycloning for a bit of cast on crit, then CoC Breeze was still just putting out more damage, I think. That's how it felt anyway, putting out more discharges. But if you're flickering, then the trigger weapon was working nice enough. But for the most part, I was absolutely playing all of the time with CoC Breeze, pretty much all the time. And as you can see on a Chila Breach, it's pretty damn smooth, just keeps up with things. I didn't end up trying a Mega Chila Breach, the Flawless Chila Breach Stone, but I think if it had friendly enough rolls on it, I think it could have actually been done, which is not something too many characters that I make can pull off, because it's a steep DPS and mobility requirement, and this seems to have enough of the mobility and probably enough DPS on the large scale if we're talking lots and lots of mobs. So something like this boss as well, he's got like 50% extra ES as life, so had to chunk down his health a bit. But something like this boss is pretty good, because as he's just like dashing around, your Flicker Strike goes with him, so there's no real DPS downtime on it. Had to just dash out a little bit though, but it was respectable enough by all means. The problem is definitely, as I mentioned though, if you don't kill things immediately, you have to start like just taking some damage, and the character, as much as I tried, wasn't really built for taking damage, because The tree was entirely going around getting all the charges, and I had to make some concessions on some of the defensive things. You could have gotten the tree, you know, not really that much life, not really that much recovery, just a bunch of extra energy shield and some evasion and all that. And I mean, I could take some damage, but certainly not that much. So this Elder Slayer fight was just an absolute nightmare. And once they all came out at once, then it's really tough to recover from there. And I had to just call it a day and be like, yep, this character ain't getting this done. So that's pretty rare, honestly. Most characters that I throw content into can, at the very least, you know, get there eventually, even if it's pretty damn ugly. This one, I had to call in the big boy and log on the shield crush, the shield, special shield throw. And I mean, as you would have seen in the previous videos, this thing's a beast, at least for my standards, and you know, I can do a lot of face tanking and I can do a lot of DPS at the same time, so it's a real nice all-rounder, and you know, just recovered this bricked arena basically, and can just do it all without really too much effort for the most part, because you can just stand there and face tank and take a bunch of damage. What else to say though? Well, the next thing is basically Maven, and Maven was never going to go well, but I had to test the character against Maven, simply because, you know, it's the last real big test and it's a 1v1 fight for the most part, and I wanted to see how the Flicker Strike would kind of perform and how the Cyclone would perform, and unfortunately getting the charges up, getting the Stormbrand up while so many things are happening and so many mechanics and stuff are happening, and Maven could just like teleport onto some bad circles and stuff, was tough. So the uptime on our damage and our Flicker Strike was pretty garbage, and then ultimately you can't Flicker Strike the brain either, because it just ports you directly into one of the beams and you die. So you basically have to go into Cyclone, and then when I did that, I mean, it was smooth enough. DPS is nothing amazing, like I said, probably about 2 to 4 million, but with the right gameplay, it's doable. And I did get it done. It just took a little bit longer than my average Maven kills, because it was still very melee focused, and we kind of built into a cast on crit discharge. Not the right way, but the way we were trying to sustain for Flicker Strike charges. Either way, it was doable, it was done, it was uncomfortable, and wouldn't really recommend anyone try and copy it, as I stated. But you could see, it looked kind of pretty, and proof of concept was there, so I had fun putting it together. Just don't really go out and spend your money for it, in my opinion, unless, you know, you personally just feel like taking on the challenge and you really liked what you saw with some of the Flicker Discharge mapping or some shit. But you can definitely allocate your resources to better builds and have more fun with other shit, I think. And there's even some nice cast on death discharges floating about there that you can copy to properly one-shot all of the endgame. So with all that said, hope you guys enjoyed the videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.